Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstars Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris Blue Ribbon. My excellent guest tonight, Steve Colbern. Steve, is that you with the noise in the background?
Yeah, I didn't
it's
have
cool.
my hand over the phone. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. It sounds like a spaceship. Sounds kind of interesting. But so tell everybody your website again, and also if they want to help you out, they can actually donate to your website, correct? For your research?
Yeah, any donations would be greatly appreciated. And there's a donate button on the website, and that's www.alienevidenceinc.webs.com. And my phone number, in case anybody wants a scan, is 805-625-2549, and I'm located in Oxnard, California, and I will drive or fly out to do scans if people will pay my travel expenses.
Very good. Excellent. And I encourage everybody to do that if you need a scan. Also, once again, Steve was the implant analysis. He did all that on my documentary, Either Remote Disclosure and Covert Technology, which actually I'm getting ready to upload in some formula. I don't know if it's going to be on Netflix or what, but it's going to be up there so people have no excuse not to see it anymore. So it will be there and available. It was sold privately on my website, and now I'm just going to put it up there. So people need to see and understand that we're dealing with real technology here and real information. And a lot of the times, obviously, with situations like this, it gets shoved under the carpet in one form or another. So it needs to be out there. This information needs to be out there. So that's what I love about the work you're doing. You're out there, and now people are starting to give you the credit you deserve. Thank goodness. You're also getting...
I'm glad of that, too. And one thing I wanted to tell people, too, is that the analysis paper for the implant that Dr. Lear pulled out of my toe, I was patient number 15, is on the website. So you can check that out if you want, for people who want to see the hard data.
Very good. Yeah, people really need to see and understand this stuff. There's no doubt about it. And it's anomalies, too. I mean, there's stuff that's going on that's needs to be paid attention to. And I'm sure these other areas do in the Black Science Department. But I'll say one thing. I think it's time. This is where we really need to stand up and be counted and just say no to the distortion that's happening here. So I think you're doing that your way, and I'm doing it my way.
Just say no.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just done with it. As a matter of fact, I can't even tolerate the crap that's going on from day to day. Even the craziness that's polarizing with just regular corporate, media and insanity with governments, and they bicker about the stupidest things, and you realize that they're doing that to distract. It's always about distraction, distraction, distraction. Just like Congress, that whole episode with Nancy Pelosi, that was a distraction. But the stuff with the Russians, that's a distraction. It's not even accurate. None of their stuff is accurate. It's all just basically look over here, but don't look there. Well, no, we're going to look over there because that's where we need to focus. And you people can run.
I don't think Trump did anything with the Russians. I think that Hillary did, though, with that uranium deal.
Actually, I think we talked about that too, with the whole election thing. No, she was stealing the election. They were actually cheating, and they were using their own divisions to do it.
Fake votes for her, and she still lost.
Yeah, they were in there with their electronic warfare doing the crime. They were actually stealing the election. Dead people were voting, for crying out loud. And if anything, I said this before, I think Russia would have reset everything to a point where they couldn't win. Not cheat. I mean, just basically reset everything so that Trump won honestly and legally because they were stealing the election from him. So somebody had to act like the big brother and say, all right, that's it. You people are out of control. Let's reset it. Somebody in the cyber department, somebody in electronic warfare obviously did that, or someone who had access. That's my take anyway. And I bet you anything that's the case. And maybe that's why they hate the Russians.
They're just mad because the Russians tried to stop their election steal. I don't know how successful they were, but they're mad about that. And Hillary was we discussed this before too, I think, but I'll say it again, that Hillary was mad at the Russians for reasons best known to herself. Maybe they're not pro-gay enough to suit her, or who knows what, but she wanted to, for whatever reason, she wanted to start a war with them the minute she got elected. And so I think we really dodged a major bullet by rejecting her at the box office.
No, totally.
I think we'd all be dead, or a lot of us be dead right now if she'd gotten into office.
Well, they're still trying. The thing is, they're still undermining the president. They're still undermining President Trump. They're doing everything they can think of, right down to the mainstream media, and inciting the mass collective to commit a crime. The brainwashing's going full speed ahead. People are socially indoctrinated into the lie. So we do have a lot of issues here. There's a war zone. It's a technological, psychological, spiritual war. It goes on so many different levels. They're going full speed ahead, and I don't think they're going to stop at anything. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, probably making him as miserable as possible in D.C., And then when he leaves that office, and I said it a billion times over, hold on to your butts, because we may not even have a country after he leaves. If that's the case, I would be very concerned about this world. That's why I'm looking ahead saying, I think I need to be off planet. I don't think I want to live on this world anymore. And there are plenty of worlds out there. It's a big multiverse.
Something bad's going to happen within the next 8 years. Like we're talking about, speaking of Trump, like you said, I mean, I just have a real strong gut feeling, and I was worried about Trump possibly resigning over all this crap, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore. He's got a tiger by the tail. I think that the chances of being assassinated by these people would be greatly increased if he didn't have the power of the presidency right now.
No, I agree with you on that one. Actually, he does have the capability. He could actually get these people for war crimes. In my opinion, I think he can get them, not just for the selling to the Russians and this and that. No, we're talking war crimes. We're talking major assassination programs being run on civilians in the United States. That's what's going to get these people. It's not going to be these other contracts.
There's a law in the books too, saying that the president can have anybody terminated that he wants to if they're a threat to national security.
Kill list.
Several people in this category, by all accounts, legitimately fit into that category. Like Soros, I think they should, if they can't arrest him, they should take him out. He's too much of a threat.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these people who are quote unquote, inciting people to commit crimes against the president or assassination should have been prosecuted immediately for treason and war crimes and terrorism and everything else. I mean, this whole group, this far leftist group, they should be. Well, I think they're classified as terrorist group, but still, this is the kind of stuff we don't need. They're not productive.
We were talking about there's a different standard between black and white. There's also a different standard between left and right. I mean, the bar is a lot higher for the left to get prosecuted for stuff like that than anybody right wing. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think the dominant factor is that there's more criminal people with criminal minds in the United States now, thanks to Obama allowing our borders to stay open and sabotaging this country with a Trojan horse. And that's why we're seeing it.
Committed by illegal aliens, if you ask me.
Oh, a lot of it is. And that's the whole idea behind it. Is just keep them, have these people come over here. It's like toy soldiers. He has all these little soldiers positioned in the U.S. infiltration, sit there and take over the American people, take over America, get all the dirty little SOBs in Congress and Supreme Court, and everybody's positioned, all around so that they can literally be part of this equation. Yeah, they were deliberately trying to sabotage America, just take it down completely from the inside out, gut it. That's what Obama's agenda was doing, and he was going full speed ahead with the executive orders, and everybody said it. We were here talking about this on Revolution Radio, and a lot of people over here, not just me, and we were telling, get what's going on here. We were watching Obama just completely destroy America, and now all of a sudden people are like having this big issue with President Trump when they should have had that same issue with the last president. So I don't get it. I really don't. But it's logic, and it's really just about if they have intellect and wits about them. And I have to ask myself, these people that are acting up and acting like psychopaths, yes, they're brainwashed. Yes, they're indoctrinated to some mind control. What kind of drugs are they taking? Seriously, I think they're medicated. I think they're on drugs. I think they're addicted to things. And I think they're brain viruses, quite honestly. And I'm sick of it. I just can't stand it anymore. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people with defective brains trying to run the world. So that's all I'll say about it. And I'm very grateful that we are star people. I call us star people. We're in star bodies. You can call it whatever you want.
Without ships, unfortunately, we're stranded here.
Well, I don't think we're stranded, and that's the whole idea behind the Merkaba. And the work that I did prior to that induction was the Merkaba is the vehicle of light. It's how you access from one dimension to the next. So, and that's taking your body with you without dying. So once again, it's a mystery school teaching, but it's a component we contain within our molecular structure, our bioelectric field, our four-body system, our light body. It's there. This is what I mean by we have the abilities to do phenomenal things, but we're on the wrong freaking planet. And we're around the wrong groups of people. And I don't need anybody with mother, father, sister, brother, big brother, this fake God, that fake God, this false God, this electronic God trying to tell me how I need to function on a timeline. Sorry, I don't need it. We're all extensions of source. We don't need it. We don't need the game. And I think that's the biggest thing. Everybody wants to divert your path and say, oh, come over here. Only through us can you get here. And it's just a bunch of crap. And now we've got Big Brother and the government and the military and the covert military. I would like to think that our military is on our side. I really would. I hope so. I really do. But I can tell you through my own personal experience, Steve, I'm really wondering. Because they had ample opportunity to help me. Ample opportunity to help me out of that situation.
Military and regular military are not the same thing.
No, they're not. That's probably the problem.
they've changed things, but I think that by and large, the regular military are still on the side of the American people. In fact, they're the only branch of government I still trust somewhat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's good because we're going to need them. I guarantee you that much. As the world closes in, and it seems like the world is becoming a very, very thin screen between countries right now, especially with the internet makes it closer. But when you think about it, everybody and their mother wants to be one blood. I call it a blood clot because that's what it reminds me of. Is this big coagulating blood clot of all this crap. It's like taking the dark age mentality and bringing it to enlightenment. I'm like, you guys aren't stepping up to the higher overtones of consciousness. You want us to be down in the slums with you. We're not doing it. But yet there are a lot of people who do want to live there. So go figure, right?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, I guess they're just not spiritually evolved or whatever you want to call it. But
well, and even the spiritual evolution comes from, in my opinion, I think it ties into the ET, the contactees. I think they are the ones who are the spiritual enlightened, which is really about being connected to source and also multidimensional space and your own celestial heritage. There are advanced species out there. And I don't know why people think they're all hostile. They're not. The hostility is coming from here. It's not coming from out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that in fact, I know in my own mind that none of the aliens want any kind of major war. I mean, that's obsolete where they come from. They've had to dispense with war because they have. We've never even seen their big guns. Their big guns could destroy the entire galaxy if two or more of the major races went to war. They just can't do that.
Right, and that's what I like about it too, because whenever the Black Science Department, the military-industrial complex, all these guys who have exotic technology that basically they've ripped off, reverse engineered, they think they're all that a bag of chips at a Snickers bar, but they're nothing compared to the real cosmic design and the big firepower out there. And this is why they need to be humbled in a sense that, we're not alone. We've never been alone. We are star people, and we incarnate here on a timeline. We live here, but we have ancestors off planet. We are visitors. And this is where the respect needs to come in for who we are as multidimensional beings. And I like to call us ambassadors too, because we are ambassadors to some degree. We represent a multiverse that they have never had a connection to, So, I mean, I could say that, and it's true. But anyways, I know we can go into other areas here. I know we get into politics, and I like communicating with you because you're just, you have a lot of really good insight over there. But I wanted to ask you a little bit, and I know you have the answer. A lot of people have come to me in the past and asked about the types of aliens, first of all, but also, is there blood involved? In other words, do they have a blood type or blood or fluid inside, or is it just a type of energy?
Yes, they do. I mean, most aliens, especially the ones that are visiting Earth right now, are humanoid. That's not to say that they're in any way even close to human, but a few are and most aren't. But they're humanoid in that they have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a circulatory system, and a heart, and a brain, and most of the major organs that we have. The Greys definitely have blood, and the reptilians, and there's Pleiadians that look human, and I don't know how similar they are inside to humans, but I'm pretty sure that they have blood, and so I think that it's pretty safe to say that all aliens that have been reported so far on the abduction circuit have blood, except maybe the ones that are made out of pure energy, like the Celestials or Angels or whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've seen them. Bodies have blood.
Right. Well, I'd like to call them, I call them more celestial oriented, but they're more light beings. I call them light beings in a sense on that level. But I was curious about that because I know there's a lot of hoopla insofar as the reverse engineering and a lot of people who are, we were talking about hybrids, and, I don't know if the RH negative is really a factor or not, because to me it seems like it doesn't really matter. It's about the frequency and the state of consciousness. But what is your impression? Did you ever check about or look into the blood types of the people you've done assessments on?
Yeah, I've asked. I haven't tested them. I'd like to be able to do that, but I've asked, and a higher than normal proportion have said that they were RH negative.
Is that right?
Dr. Lear thought that it was probably not correlated, but I tend to think it probably is. But we don't have any really good scientific data yet to prove it one way or the other. But I think it probably is correlated.
That's very, very interesting. Yeah. And the patterns are usually the same. I mean, most of the time, correct me if I'm wrong, but the people that have been pulled into some of these things that you've actually assessed have had not necessarily bad experiences, have they're pretty positive, or were they traumatic, or do you think it's more positive than negative?
Most of the people that I've talked to have been definitely traumatized by it, but it's not all bad either. But there's three classes of people that claim to be abductees, or experiencers, however you want to put it. There's people that are wannabes that either are lying or they've talked themselves into it, just convinced themselves that they are when they're not, and those are pretty easy to spot. And there's people that have been that are real abductees, but they've been driven crazy by their experiences and have a lot of issues, and they're kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. And then there's the ones that are like us that may have some issues, but we're pretty well adjusted. And
yeah, we're like warriors. Yeah.
The second group are the most common, unfortunately. So yeah, mm-hmm. It is traumatic for people. I mean, it's disorienting and it's traumatic, but it's definitely not all bad. And most people say that they would not give it up if they had the opportunity to do so.
Right. I think the problem with that is, the problem with contactees and the trauma is that once they get pulled in, they should basically not be on this world. That's just me. I think that's what creates the disturbance, because they need to be with that species off planet or wherever, if they choose to.
Right.
Because when they come back, it's like you can't go back. Once you change, it's like a vampire bites you. You know, once you alter, it's hard to go back. It really, really is. So,
if people want to argue that the aliens are bad, I think their greatest crime is trapping people like us between two worlds. It is very difficult.
I've always been like that since this induction. I've had 1 foot out there, 1 foot here, but most of me's out there, and that's why I keep pushing for just getting out of here. And one thing is, I want to say hi to Steve over there, and he asked a question: don't they have synthetic life forms too, like androids? That's a good question, and I agree with that. What would you say?
They do, but it's a lot more economical to make biological androids than to make mechanical ones. So they just use genetic engineering to make whatever beings they want in general. But yeah, they do have mechanical androids. They're just not used very often.
Right. Well, it seems to me like if you clone something, it's not going to have a spirit or a soul. So there you go. You'll have that kind of an android, right?
Yeah.
Because the components behind it would just be electrical signals and nothing else. No spirit, no soul, just a record of information, right?
You know, a mechanical android versus a biological one.
Mm-hmm.
I think clones do have biological clones. I think do have souls, but certainly a mechanical android would not.
That's interesting. So you do think they do? Okay. I was wondering about that because it would. So you think they can clone the soul, or what is your impression of that?
It's probably just automatically supplied by God or whatever being you believe in when the conception is made. I would think, but
that's interesting. Well, yeah, you never know. Yeah, I tend to think that once we go into another body, we have a choice to either be there or not be there. But that's just me, and that's the free will I think of. But that's very interesting. There's no doubt. You remember John Nash, don't you? The guy who was the brilliant mathematician, A Beautiful Mind, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, I was funny because I was just, not to digress or anything, but I just wanted to mention this very quickly. You know, I was looking at some of his old documentary on him, and he had, obviously he was called schizophrenic and this and that, but he said he was in contact with extraterrestrials. He also communicated a lot of information that told me, in my own intuitive surveillance background, and experience, that he was probably plugged into a covert warfare program of some kind. Now, he never knew that. He spent his entire life getting screwed over, going into mental wards, getting medicated, probably never understood what had happened to him. Did you ever look into his case?
No, I never really have. I just saw part of the movie.
Because when he said, no, you can't watch the movie, that's Hollywood. If you look at the documentary on him, he actually said he was in communication with an extraterrestrial race or some kind of an off-world species. And I find that interesting.
He may have been in group number 2 that I was talking about, that an abductee that had been driven crazy by his experiences.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. If he wasn't pulled in naturally through an experience of an ET and then got hijacked with the covert intel, because the military, not military necessarily, but government, covert military government would have been involved in that to some degree. Once again, it's a threat to national security. They love to play that card,
Oh yeah, they're scared to death of us. I mean, they're scared, maybe rightly so, that the aliens could push a button somewhere and turn us all into super soldiers.
Well, that's true too. Well, you push us hard enough.
It may be set up that way, and we attract attention from the national security state and the Black Project military for that reason, and because they want to see what abilities we have and what psychic abilities we have and what other possible abilities we have. And
Well, what abilities we have is for everybody, really. When you think about it, anybody could really become more enhanced psychically or with a lot of different gifts. Everybody has a certain amount of gifts, but it's just a matter of tuning in and working with those.
Well, the aliens tend to pick people that are on the, in the top, 5 or 10% of
right.
Psychic ability, for one thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what I think that is? I think that's because the target is usually raising their vibration. They're at a higher frequency, and that they're detectable by the off-world species, and that's why they're getting pulled in. That's just my own impression. It's when we raise our vibration, we step up. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a subjective thing, and also from a few reports I've heard from other experiencers, contact with these beings definitely raises your vibration and raises your psychic abilities temporarily too.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. It's kind of like a booster. There's no doubt about that one. Yeah, and he was mentioning here, that was Steve again, and hi, Steve, over there. The biobots, he calls them, or the drones. He was just talking a little bit about some of that stuff. A lot of people said that the the Roswell situation, which I think was a decoy, was also they were not real life forms. They were engineered life forms, or is that the right terminology?
Yeah, well, the Greys in general are engineered life forms. They're humanoids that may have looked like us or more like us at one point, that have had technology for so long that has influenced them a lot. They've genetically engineered themselves to have higher intelligence and engineered their emotions away and made it so that they don't have a digestive system. And the military's opinion was that they were genetically engineered for long-distance space flight, and that may well be true. And they've enhanced their telepathic abilities, and they've, unfortunately for them, engineered away most of their creativity too, and that's part of what they want us for.
Right. Do you know what the first record is of a Gray being observed? What year that might have been, just intuitively? I don't know if you know that or not. I was just going to ask.
In the modern age, it was people described beings like the Greys and the great airship sighting flap of the 1890s.
Okay, so that was before all the other stuff. Okay, yeah.
That may have been when the hybrid program started too.
Wow, that was some time ago then. Very, very interesting. So yeah, I'd like to. I'm so analytical and cerebral. It's not funny. So I'm trying to associate this with some of the stuff that was going on prior to World War II, using that as a benchmark. What you're talking about, something that was way before that.
Yeah, they didn't even have heavier than air flying machines built by humans at that time that anybody knows about, and people were seeing them, and there was a huge UFO. Basically, it was a big UFO flap before the modern age, and based on some family records, people have hypothesized that the hybrid program may have started about that time, and there were certainly some reports of Gray-type beings back then. In fact, a UFO during that period crashed in Aurora, Texas, and I believe it was 1898.
Really?
And crashed into a windmill and blew up, and they saw one body ejected from the wreckage, and they described it as being like a typical Gray, and they buried it.
Really? That's interesting.
There was a gravestone in the city cemetery for this thing, and when the story came out a few years ago, of course it disappeared. The government came out and dug him up, I think.
Is that right? Wow, that's very, very interesting. I have ancestors that were in Texas. I wonder if they knew that. Very, very interesting.
The Aurora, Texas crash.
Wow. I was trying to analyze that with it. So what happened with Roswell? Supposedly, and I know this is probably old news to everybody out there because everybody goes with a different storyline. That's the problem I'm running into. That some of these things were captured and some died on impact. What was your take on that whole scene?
Well, I've heard that they captured at least two bodies at the Roswell site or sites. Nobody's not sure if there were one or as many as three. The story that sounded most believable to me is that they found a site with one site with a crashed UFO that had a big hole in the side that had three beings outside, one of which was alive and walking around, and two of which were dead. And then there was another site with just wreckage where one of it apparently blew up, and there were no survivors. And they said they took the surviving being to Los Alamos and interrogated it, and then it lived there for a couple of years before dying. And they allowed it to use a communication device that it found in the wreckage to contact its people, and while it was there. And Corso, in his book, I'd highly recommend people read Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell. It talks about all this stuff. Supposedly they found memory metal that when you bent it, it would bend back to its original position. Foil that when you crumpled it up, it would real tight. It would go back to its original shape. And the viewports on the vehicle were night vision, and that's where they got the idea for night vision. And the aliens use fiber optics instead of wiring, because there's a lot of electrical interference in the craft. They use a lot of high voltages and strong electromagnetic fields in general, and they got the idea for fiber optics from that. And the aliens were wearing suits that were very tough and had fabric that could not be cut with regular instruments, and so they got the idea for bulletproof vests from that, and turned all these ideas into industry, apparently.
That's very interesting. I know they've been doing a lot of that too with insects now. Using a lot of different reverse engineering, I guess, to some degree, to create different types of suits that make the super soldiers more powerful in the battlefield. It's very fascinating when you talk about this. I have to say, you're so important on the timeline. I don't think you realize it, but I think I always knew that when I first heard you. And I was glad I got to meet you in person when you did the implant analysis scan. I have to say, you know an awful lot of data. And I know I'm probably asking generic questions, and everybody's talked about Roswell, but not everybody understands it the way you do, because you're different. You're really more inside than you realize. So it's interesting to hear what your take is on that. And I did want to ask you also about all that hoopla about the stranger at the Pentagon. Is there anything truth to that, or was that just a bunch of BS?
I didn't believe it at first, but I've been reading more stories about Val Thor, and I think it may be true. I mean, it certainly sounds true. Certainly, I think that a guy named Val Thor was in the Pentagon that they thought was an alien, but whether he's from Venus or not is the only question in my mind. But there is apparently a big cover-up going on about Venus. They've sent a lot of probes to Venus, and you can't hardly get any data at all from NASA or the Russian Space Agency about pictures of Venus or data, hard data of any kind about Venus from the internet. And I know for sure there's a cover-up going on about Mars, and it seems like, if anything, it's even greater with Venus. So maybe there is some truth to that. I don't know what to think about the origins of the guy, but I think there probably was a guy named Val Thor that the Pentagon thought was an alien that visited for a while.
That's very interesting. I remember reading something about that. I know there was not a documentary, but a film was out not too long about it. Also, the ant people that they talk about with the Hopi, do you see a correlation between them and the Greys at all, or no?
I think they're probably affiliated with a different group. But
okay, I was just curious.
Perhaps the reptilians. I know the Mayans claimed contact with the reptilians. They're the serpent god and all that. The serpent's a symbol of the earthly reptilians.
Right. Yeah, and I know a lot of people. Right, and a lot of people try to bastardize the whole thing about the serpent, and I don't subscribe to that. I don't think that's accurate at all. I think that's propaganda. I'm not saying they're all perfect, but I would say.
What do you mean by bastardize?
Well, just meaning that the whole reptilian thing, everybody's a reptile, everybody's evil, and this whole idea is just like, I'm just not buying it anymore. I think a lot of it is just one person starts something, and then it gets into the whole web as just this distortion. So you've got to stay clear of those things, in my opinion. So I'd like to analyze things one-on-one, when it comes down to any kind of species or whatever is a potential species. People like to categorize.
From the reports I've heard about reptilians, I would characterize them as, if the reports are accurate, there's a lot less evidence for them hard evidence for them than there is for the Greys. But from the reports, and if they're accurate, I would say that the reptilians are kind of paranoid, aggressive, and defensive, but not evil by the usual sense of the word.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's very, very interesting. So have you done any more hunting around for any pieces of craft? I know you were involved in some of that a while back, but have you been doing anything else?
No, I went out to the San Augustine crash site once, and the whole area had been overgrown with vegetation for the first time in like 50 years after a huge rainstorm, and so we didn't find anything. But The area is, in my opinion, close to being picked over, but there might be some more stuff out there to find, but we didn't find any on that trip.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got quite a bit of material that was given to me by John Rao and Chuck Wade and Art Campbell, and some of it I haven't even analyzed yet. So
be good.
When I get funding, I'll have to analyze all that stuff.
Right, and I encourage everybody to help you with your funding too. By the way, I wish I had money. I'd sponsor you because you really do need it. There's no doubt about it. This stuff is important. You know what bothers me the most, Steve? You should have a contract. I mean, but the government would steal everything anyway. But it's too bad because all these clowns out there are getting all this money and funding from these departments, even the Pentagon, and they're worthless. And yet you have all this experience. And, it's just I like it when people get justice, when things happen for them. And this is one thing I do like about, it seems like this is going to be a good year for you, and I'm happy about that. But I would say, you give credit where credit is due and where it's deserved, and not to these other clowns.
It sure does seem like I'm being actively blocked sometimes. That's for sure. But I don't like to blow my own horn or brag or anything like that. But you were saying that I'm an important person, and that certainly jibes with what I remember the aliens telling me. They were going on and on about how important I was, and saying something to the effect that you're going to have all kinds of success and power once you realize who you are, or whatever that means. So
you know what? Don't underestimate your psyche and your intellect and your consciousness, because I know that you have a lot of information. I'm not just talking from this world. You're a very expanded being, and not everybody's switched on like that. So yeah, I see it. There's no doubt about it.
A lot of this stuff I repeated as fact because it was told to me as fact, and a lot of it I didn't read out of any books. I just know what I know. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. That's the same way I operate. What's interesting too is it's like you've taken a lot of risks doing this. It's not something that's this is something that when you're doing these implant analysis scans, this can be intense, especially when you're getting tracked by any agency, or not because of you, but even the people that you're doing the implant analysis for. So I think it's interesting, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I want to thank you once again. That's why I've always supported you, and I like you on my show, and you're a friend, and I just think that people need to pay attention to your work. That's all there is to it.
That's starting to happen, and I'm really pleased.
Glad.
I'm glad that it's going well finally this year.
Well, it's about time. Yeah. Well, that's another thing. You're bringing more credibility to that world, and instead of these clowns and everybody's just focusing on the idiots, let's focus on somebody like you who actually knows what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, and I think that's a good idea too. I mean, I am the real deal. I mean, I'm not going to have any false modesty about that, and
you're very analytical and you're good at what you do, and like I said, I'm very glad to have known you on the timeline, and I'm really glad that you did the implant analysis scan for me, because when you got stuff like that built into you, you need validation, and it's a big deal when you get the validation, because then you don't feel like you're just like, wow, could I have imagined this or not? And I know I didn't, because I knew this was technological, but it's interesting when you start doing these things, people need the validation, they need to know, and we need to approach it on that level of science, but also looking at it. Go ahead.
Well, I know when I saw the X-ray of the implant in my toe, that certainly changed my life, and when you get physical evidence like that, it makes it impossible to remain in denial.
That's right. Well, and that's the thing is, how long are they going to look away? Oh, change the subject. Oh, penalize this person. Put him in jail. Put him behind bars, or prosecute him for whatever. They can't pull these cards out anymore. And this is why we're doing what we're doing here on the radio. We're done with it.
I've definitely already paid a price for this, because that time when they hauled me in and broke my ankle, I mean, I spent 10 months on crutches over that, and there was a lot of pain involved, and the doctor, when I got it checked out, said there was a good chance I might die. I'm going like, die from a broken ankle? I mean, what else can go wrong?
Wow, and that was the blood clot, yeah.
Luckily, that didn't happen, but it was a life-threatening blood clot that they caused.
I believe it. I know I've had my own share of weirdness over the years, which is, I won't tell you on air, but I've told you off air about some of the stuff that's happened to me that I've documented, that it's just been out of this orbit, so to speak. So, they definitely try to do a lot of things to stop people, keep them down as best you can, just keep hitting them. It's almost like a slow kill. And I've talked about it, because when you're dealing with anything like this, and even I always wondered about Dr. Lear, the late Dr. Roger Lear, because we kind of touched on that before on one of my shows when we might have suspected maybe there was some foul play there because he was hitting some nerves and he was doing things that were connected to classified beyond classified materials, if you ask me. So, I put him on the
right. Let me tell you about that. I mean, about 2 years before he died, he was doing okay health-wise. His health was never really that good because the circulatory system was shot for whatever reason. I'm not sure what he did to himself, and he ate too much fried food or junk food or whatever. But as long as I knew him, his circulatory system was pretty well shot, and he'd had a heart attack before and had to have bypass surgery, and he was undergoing occasional chelation therapy to try to clear out his arteries, and he got in a car crash about 2 years before he died, and he said that he was going down the freeway and there was a bang under his hood, and he said he lost steering control and went off the freeway and hit a tree, and his health went into a downward spiral after that. He got shingles about 2 or 3 months after the crash and got a bad ulcer on his ankle. It did not heal because there wasn't enough circulation to the leg. And he finally got surgery to restore circulation to the leg, and that was successful, and it finally healed up, and he dodged a bullet on that. Then only about a month or two after he had the surgery and he was out of the woods on the first thing, he dropped the book on the ankle of the other leg and caused another wound that wouldn't heal, and he was going to get surgery on that leg too, but then died of an apparent heart attack before he could get the surgery.
Yeah, it just seems like this. I don't believe in accidents. I'm sorry, I just don't. And I know that they can create things that look like accidents.
I didn't believe it was an accident either when he said there was a bang under the hood. I mean, somebody could have easily put a small explosive device on his steering line or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's all kinds of foul play going on, whether people realize it or not. And it's not conspiracy. It's literally, that's how they play. That's how these guys operate. Yeah. So,
if you have reason to be paranoid about things like this, then you should watch out for stuff like that. And whenever something does happen, it's almost certainly not a coincidence.
No, there's no coincidence. Even people you encounter down the road, people who just show up, you have to be really aware, especially if you're somebody who's been involved in programs like I have. Even my lawyer told me that a long time ago. He said you have to bring a camera with you and take pictures of license plates and peoples and all kinds of people. Anybody who's in your space, you just have to make sure you take notes. And be aware because they're out there. Yeah, it's nasty. And
I remember the first time I set up the booth at the scanning booth at the UFO Congress. At least 3 people showed up that I could almost bet money were government agents that started asking a lot of questions about what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Probably from different agencies.
Do they come in pairs? Because they usually come in pairs. Did you notice?
Yeah, there was one instance where they came in pairs. The other 2 were alone, or if they weren't alone, their partner was out of sight.
Yeah,
out of plain sight.
Sometimes they like Jehovah's Witnesses, man. They like show up in pairs. So a lot of the time they do, not all the time, but it's kind of interesting. I don't know if they still do that. They might have changed their formula since then, but very interesting. I was going to ask you a little bit about the elongated skulls. I know there's a lot of research now. They're testing it and associating it with extraterrestrials. Do you see that as a connection to anything that you've done research with?
Not really, no. I mean,
okay, I was just wondering about that. Where does that lead us? I don't even know what to say about it.
The elongated skulls belong to people that were hybrids, most likely between the Nephilim or Anunnaki or whatever those people were back then they're mentioned in the Bible that gave rise to the giants and humans. And the implants and technology we're dealing with now are from grays, which are a totally different.
Different species grays. Entirely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And I kind of suspected that myself. I was just curious about that. But you don't associate, and I know this is probably theoretical, but you don't associate the elongated skulls with like the Titans, do you, or anything like that? Or are you talking more? You said Anunnaki type, or?
Well, we can't really be sure if the Anunnaki and the Nephilim are the same thing, but the Bible says Nephilim and the Sumerians said Anunnaki. They could have been one and the same, or they could have been different races. But whatever the case might be, these elongated skull people were in my opinion, most likely hybrids between humans and one or the other of those species, and that gave rise to the giants mentioned in the Bible.
That makes a lot of sense. But they strike me as indigenous to this world. In other words, they don't strike me as off-world, like they were engineered for here only. Now that's just me. I could be wrong, but that's just what I see, because the other ones are with the high tech. It seems like they're very fluid in multidimensional space. In other words, they know how to navigate. And what we're seeing here is really just a bunch of old bones. And I don't want to poo-hooing it. I'm just saying that it doesn't show me a whole lot, other than the fact that this is an indigenous species. And
they had sequences that hadn't been seen before, so they definitely are a different subspecies of humanity, if nothing else.
That's pretty interesting.
They have not proved that they're alien to my satisfaction, or to certainly to the mainstream satisfaction, but they've shown some really interesting stuff that's very unusual, and it certainly warrants a lot more investigation. They could be aliens. I suspect that they're hybrids between an older alien species and humans.
Right. Well, that's the thing is too. People they say, "Oh, we're human. We're the human race." We're not the human race. That's a mind control program. There's no such thing as a human, and I know people are going to get slayed by that. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. We're star people. We have star bodies. We're multidimensional beings, and we've been on and off planet billions and billions of times. So when we talk about these things, what is an alien, Steve? We're aliens. We are, to some degree.
Yeah.
So
even the mainstream science says that modern humans are a mutation that occurred 100,000 or more years ago from Homo habilis. So who's to say that the mutation wasn't caused by somebody? I think it probably was. And the story that the Anunnaki genetically engineered us to mine gold sounds possibly true to me.
So you think that too, and when I look at that, I think to myself, there's so many things out there in the multiverse. I don't know why they would need gold, and this place is not that unique in my opinion. To me, I see this place as terraformed out the wazoo. I believe this place was terraformed so that people could actually live here and reside here temporarily as a station. I don't think they were supposed to stay here permanently as a species at all. Somehow something happened where everybody got stuck here, and it's not okay. I'm telling you point blank, we need to get out of here.
I bet a lot of aliens have been stuck here over the years, crashed.
They're not supposed to be here. We're not supposed to be here either.
On another note, I think that I don't have any proof of this yet, but I have a strong gut feeling that a lot of species of animals and plants that we see here are non-native, that don't come from this planet.
I agree with that also. Yeah. Even when you look at the animal kingdom itself, I mean, everybody seems to think that, this is where life starts and we're all from here. I'm just not buying it. I'm sorry. I know too much about the off-world celestial design work to be from here. Seeds and bacterial spores can easily come in on comets. They had an incident like that back in 2001 in Kerala, India, where a comet exploded in the upper atmosphere, and then it rained down these red strange cells that were obviously very unusual for like a month afterwards. Right. Well, even if you look, that's true, and it can affect everybody. Frequencies can affect everybody. Fred Hoyle, that was one of the smartest people on the planet, thought that there were life forms on comets, and especially bacteria and viruses, but there could have been higher life forms too. Oh, I believe that. Yeah, it's like War of the Worlds? Well-documented accounts, many of them, as a matter of fact, of raining fish and frogs. Perhaps they came from comets as well. It's highly possible. It's interesting. Wasn't it War of the Worlds where they did that, Steve, where they had in the end, it was a virus that takes them out? Yeah. They weren't used to the viruses on this planet. Oh, yeah, this place is one big virus to some degree. Now we have biowarfare. God only knows what they're putting in the biowarfare. It could be a hybrid transmission. Who knows? Yeah, the chemtrails have bioweapon organisms in them by all accounts. Right. Yeah, and then the nanotechnology is self-replicating. So what pray tell is it replicating? Is it replicating? I don't know. I know that those Morgellons organisms seem to be some sort of an artificial organism. I'm not sure exactly what they're for or how they work, but they're very unusual. They replicate and they take the form of like colored strings that come out of the person's body that has a disease. It's really interesting and disgusting at the same time. Yeah, there's all that going on too. Yeah, that's a very interesting timeline. There's no doubt. I just think that intuitively speaking, we need to keep our sights on the cosmic design. We need to focus on what's above us in consciousness and our evolution. And what you're doing is exactly what you need to be doing here. and just stay on that higher frequency band, because we can't be sucked down into this maelstrom. And that's what I like about Elon Musk. I was going to ask you a little bit about what your impression was of his work,
Sure.
and also the Tesla car that was spun into the illusion of the orbit, I guess. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think that Elon Musk, like I said, is one of the biggest innovators since Tesla, and it's maybe no coincidence that his other company is called Tesla, and I think that it's huge that he obviously knows exactly what he's doing with SpaceX and with space in general, because and he must have a lot of talented engineers working for him, because it's huge that he came out with 2 major new booster designs, one of which is 2/3 the size of a Saturn V, and got both of them to succeed on the first flight. I mean, the government contractors are never able to do that, not ever. I mean, the only one that they ever flew that didn't blow up on the first flight was the Saturn V, and I think that was because they had help from all the German experts.
Yeah. No, I think he's done an outstanding job.
Not an American rocket, anyway.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it's very impressive what he's doing, and I hope he stays clear, and I hope he doesn't get corrupted. I really do, because we need him. We need somebody like him. I think he can do a lot of good.
Yeah.
I really, really do.
Well, somebody's trying to sabotage him, because the Falcon 1, which didn't succeed till the 4th flight, I'm pretty sure the first. I don't know about the next 2, but the first flight that blew up looked like sabotage to me. I mean, there was a fuel leak around the engine. Somebody could have easily loosened that fitting before flight. And the other launch companies were just seething with jealousy and rage to stop the competition. So.
Right. What year was that? Do you remember what year that was?
2002, I think.
Okay, so that was with 2002. That was early on then. Yeah, that could have been a lot of different sabotage.
It was a much smaller rocket that they started out with that took off from Kwajalein, and they were really holding their breath for a while. Because first they had a fire around the engine that destroyed the vehicle, and then the next 2 were destroyed by, or not destroyed, but the missions failed because of stage separation problems, and then the 4th one succeeded. They only had funds for like one more try before the company would have gone bankrupt.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, timing is everything. Sounds like he's right there on the timeline where he needs to be at this point.
Yeah, he is now. But somebody's still trying to stop him, because that incident where they had one blow up on the pad was about maybe a year ago now. I guess it was definitely sabotage. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's really reeked of that.
They apparently don't like to talk about it, but they showed what looked like in some sort of an anti-gravity driven probe, either alien or government. It's hard to tell which in this day and age, but somebody's probe flew by and hit it with an energy weapon.
Oh, wow. So they remotely disabled it. Sounds like electronic warfare.
This thing was flying by. It got within about 100 yards, and all of a sudden there was a bright flash between the right at the top of the second stage, between the second stage and the payload. And then fuel started spilling out, and then there was a big explosion.
Wow. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Somebody sent a disruptor. Very, very interesting. Well, it's not unheard of that they do those things. They did a lot of electronic warfare going on. No doubt about that.
It looked to me like either an infrared laser, a powerful infrared laser, or a scalar weapon that they used.
Yeah, this is what I mean by the wrong people having access to technology like we're talking about, because sitting there and trying to play, I'm going to be the controlling factor in the sky. I'm going to be the eye in the sky, or controlling the moon, or controlling this. We can't have this kind of garbage going on, and he deserves to have his chance. So people that do that kind of sabotage, that's not okay. But you're seeing it all the time. And entrepreneurs are the first ones to get attacked. It's really frustrating to observe some of these people that just get, well, I think that's happened to you to some degree, quite honestly. So
yeah, I think so too. And there's a lot of government people too that just don't want any private individual doing space. I mean, they may screw it up till the cows come home, but they still don't want private individuals doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, it's going to get to the point where people can't even transfer out properly anymore, because they're going to want to do a transhumanism thing or something. I'm not kidding you. These guys don't want anybody incarnating on this world, off this world. They want to be the controlling factor for everybody's evolution, and it's not going to fly. So we're in a war zone. There's no doubt about that. It's got to be dealt with too. We can't have this BS going on. Steve has a question here for you. Do you have a good idea what off-worlders are running the show now, which ones, and how much power they still have?
Well, I think I kind of think it's like an alien UN outside the Earth's sphere of influence, with the Gray Alliance, the Reptilian Alliance, and the Pleiadians kind of having a kind of running the show jointly. And I don't think the Greys can do anything they want down here. I think the only reason they're able to abduct so many people is because our government's given them permission.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't even know if they're actually giving anybody permission anymore, because it seems to me like whenever somebody like a contactee gets enhanced or has anything going on that's anomalous, all of a sudden they're trying to run national security because they don't want that contactee having access or a relationship with any other species which can provide information, especially when it comes to covert warfare and security issues. I can see that part, but still they don't have a right. I'm sorry. When they get selected, when we are who we are as multidimensional beings, we go to certain locations on the map off planet. It's nobody's business, really. It's really nobody's business.
I suspect that now, since our government's becoming more hostile, the other aliens decided to let the Greys go ahead and with their program to keep us under control.
Right. Well, it certainly seems to me like national security, whatever divisions, these alphabet agencies, spin-off divisions are literally the ones trying to control, manipulate, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure that happens. But it's not going to fly because they're violating universal law, and that's going to have to be dealt with. So they're actually out of line big time. And the military-industrial complex has been out of line for a very long time. And I think their days are numbered. I think their days are over. I think they're an old dinosaur that just needs to go away, just like the rest of them. I mean, that's just the way I see it.
They seem to want to fight wars for their own sake nowadays. I mean, they justified themselves by being on a war footing because of the dangerous Soviet Union and the Russians and all that. And now that that's all over with and everything, they keep reinventing themselves and reinventing different reasons to be on red alert. They've invented a lot of this terrorism to justify themselves. I kind of think the badass terrorists that they want us to believe in is mostly a myth, unless they fund some.
Right. No, I agree. They're building the terrorists. I mean, the terror cells are all orchestrated by them. Covert Intel, CIA. They've built up the whole ISIL and the whole group. That we're talking about those terrorists. But anything that we have here where we're dealing with conflict is created by them. This is the game board they're playing, and I'm sick of it. I want bliss. I want happiness. I don't want this crap.
There's a lawlessness about American Black Project and intelligence community. Foreigners have commented about it. I'm sure the aliens think that. They are lawless. They just want to do what they want to do whenever they want to do it.
Basically, it's run like a prison. Control. Yeah, and they don't have any respect for any life form. And because they don't have respect for any life form, you've got to ask yourself, well, if you guys can't step it up here on this illusion of a planet called Earth, you sure as hell can't do it elsewhere. This is why I think these guys are screwed. And this is why the more they try to oppress beings like us, the worse it's going to be for them. They really technically should have laid off, but they didn't. They wanted to play God, and they wanted to sit here and play this whole orchestration, and now it's going to hit them in the butt. So, like I said, there's always a bigger eye in the sky. There's always a bigger fish in the pond, and they ain't it. So I think
if they think they're ever going to defend themselves against beings like the Greys or the Reptilians, they're sadly mistaken. I mean, these people have energy weapons that could destroy a planet, and that's the least of what they can do. They could make an entire species extinct from light years away just by turning a few knobs or stuff like that. Are things we can hardly even imagine they can do.
Right, they can wink this planet out in a heartbeat. I'm sure of that too. Absolutely. Yeah. They don't even need to be here. They don't even need to be showing up in our orbit. This is what they don't understand.
Yeah, they wanted to kill us all. They could have done it easily a long time ago.
Exactly. This is why I love our celestial heritage, because no matter what they try to do to us here, we're still going to be able to ascend and go home. Whether they like it or not, we don't, nobody cares. So, we're going to run out of time here. Steve, it's awesome talking to you tonight. I just love having you on as my regular guest. And I want to thank you so much for everything you do. And once again, give everybody a rundown how to get in touch with you and how to access your website.
Okay, my website is www.alienevidenceinc.web.com, and my phone number is 805-625-2549. And if anybody wants to pay in advance for a scan, it's $40 if you pay in advance for a scan at the conference. And at the conference, it'll be $50. And
okay, and I've got to let you go there, Steve. But everybody access his website and donate to Steve's website. And thank you, Steve, so much. Stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David, Dodger, and Becky. Coming up next is Sally Wand tonight from Down Under with their fantastic show. As they always have, they're going to talk about hypothesis. Once again, Steve, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you on tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the questions.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed, people working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country was founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined at the banks. Open your eyes to banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Who? Thomas Jefferson. Because he saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution is more dangerous than an army, he said. He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This is our war. And this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine